Ṣẹ̀kẹ̀rẹ̀ lọ bá jó, ṣẹ̀kẹ̀rẹ̀ lọ bá jó, olúwa mi ò dìde ojó ṣẹ̀kẹ̀rẹ̀.
Welcome, everyone, to the Theoryforge Chronicles. I am Phantom X, of course, joined by Diggs and the legendary Neurotoxin. This is episode 24. Neuro, I'll let you explain the title since you came up with it.
Certainly. So, am I coming through all right?
It looks all good on my end.
Cool. Just want to make sure it was looking funky for a second. Yeah, so... the phrase "the world was built in 7 days" or "the world wasn't built in 7 days," depending on the statement someone's trying to make. Well, Elyria wasn't built in 7 days. And I'm not trying to make a dig on, oh man, they're taking so long to do it. But, it's more the idea that, it's not easy building a world. It's really, really not easy to come up with all of this level of minutia. All the creatures, all the plants, all the interactions, environments, all the way down to apparently where the water can and will accumulate and flow under various conditions. And for me, that's super, super exciting. I love that. I love the idea that, you've got whoever, living in the desert, you got maybe somewhere living in the desert, and they tell people, oh, don't build over there. And they're cool, yeah, well, whatever. I'm gonna build over there anyway. And flood comes through, and they were right in the floodplain that completely wiped their homes away when the flash flood came through and drained out through that area. It's like, well, hey, we told you not to build there.
Hopefully they tell you why you shouldn't build there instead of
maybe
just...
Maybe if you ask instead of just building it instead. you know how people are sometimes, like, oh, I don't care. Anyway.
And of course, because we are since our last show, the two pieces of information, I guess, to talk about tonight. One is the most recent post, which, as you were just getting to, is the water, kind of showing how that all works. And the other was the world building that Snipe, the video he posted, which was awesome. But anyways, that sort of also went to the idea of playing God. So again, to the wasn't built in 7 days. I could go into religion and stuff, but we're not going to do that. So anyways,
I'll offer that the title that I was initially proposing was it ain't easy being God King, but I wasn't sure if that communicated well enough. So I kept trying.
So with these two things, I guess we could start with the older stuff first. So the video that was been the prior to yesterday's post. Anything that
May 31st.
Yeah, I can actually pull it up. So anything for you two? Anything that sticks out that looked kind of cool, interesting? The whole damn thing's complex as can be. I mean, it's just nuts, but...
Yeah, actually getting to see more of the tools themselves and the complexity and how it all works together in interfaces, it's something that's really exciting to me. It's one of those things where I see it and it's like, bless the marriage between the tools engineers and the systems and stuff they're using to be able to resolve to a system that I say it loosely, easy to interface with, relatively speaking. It's just an amazing piece of technological work they've got, considering the size and the scale that they're covering with all these simulations, and the idea that if you've got 164 by 64 area, you're not just considering what's happening there, but you're also considering what it's doing to all the ones around it. If this one fills up, what happens? Is it going to spill over into this one? So these simulations and all the stuff that they're doing is just absolutely incredible. It's the sort of thing that no matter what happens going forward with the game, it's the sort of thing that I would imagine would be a great academic study going forward for not just games, but just world simulation in general.
Yeah.
I could see NASA using this, for example.
I mean, the level of detail is just nuts. And that's all, that's all proprietary. Like, they've created that whole process, correct?
Well, I'm pretty sure it has been
the tools they're using.
Yeah. With here's the engine we've got. Here's the scripting language that we picked, and here's our art pipeline, and everything else is invented code and systems and stuff.
Because I guess what I was
amazing,
getting in my head. Even that piece of software, if it works well, do you license it out to other people too? It was just fascinating watching him use it.
I'd really love to see them go back and make the previous Meow that Snipe was working on with Revival. That would be amazing with this sort of world building technology, and I would play the shit out of that game. Not that I'm not going to with Elyria, but I that might be quit my job, go pro streamer status.
Yeah,
I would get down on that. We'll see what goes on with Chronicles of Elyria. It's I'm excited for it either way, but once the game's out the door and people actually see the tech in action, not just the how it's able to work for generating the world itself, but then on top of that, how it works with a world in motion that changes, that things get altered and adjusted. That's just amazing. I really do hope they have it in some sort of like repackageable and exportable format at some point somewhere in the future.
And Snipe sort of explaining the process was really interesting too. So starting with the shape and then saying, okay, this, telling the system, this is this biome, this is this biome, and then just sort of letting it go from there, and how that translates all the way into the settlement that gets put there, from the size to what the NPCs are doing, to what because of the resources. That all comes back to just sort of that original button click of here's the biome we want here is sort of really it's really cool. If it works, because I just think how long, of course not necessarily equivalent, but the equivalent of like World of Warcraft. How long do they spend? How long on a theme park MMO do they actually spend designing a world exactly how they want it? How much money goes into that? To where if they develop some sort of proprietary software that you just sort of give it some rough guidelines, and you have this massive world it's kind of fascinating.
Yeah. WoW is actually a really funny example for you to bring up, because I think of how absolutely terrible, crude, janky, disjointed the world was actually built. You only saw the theme park view, like the literal real world theme park view. You only see the zone you're in while you're within the zone for the most part. Zone transitions are very sudden and distinct, so you're going from one place to the other. It very much feels like some land name after some animation tycoon or something. But it's in that it's also that you never get to see, and it was one of the things people like me that like to platform around and explore sometimes would find. You'll see how janky the world was. You climb up somewhere you're not normally supposed to get to. You start looking at the edge between two zones, and it's like, well, the gate to get through looks pretty, but then everything else, looks like it was stripped bare and just, left super chunky. And then when you start doing fly-throughs over these areas, the flight system itself didn't actually do a very good job of hiding these things. they would put some things in all of the paths to try to make it look a little bit less bad and a little less sharp of a transition, but it looked like I was flying over a political map, not a geographical map of the game world, with very roughly defined borders that were really crappy and craggy, except for the expected entry and exit points. That was just so funny to me. And so the idea that they've had to probably rebuild and redo the world a bunch of times over to, consider all the different iterations on all the different, flying mounts and all that stuff, that's super funny to me. And even though flying mounts aren't really going to be a thing they're not going to be a thing in Elyria, right? Not like super common or anything that I'm aware of.
Yeah, I don't believe so.
So it's not the sort of thing where you'd have to worry about the world looking like crap and breaking apart when you fly over it. But in the event that somebody does somehow slingshot themselves across the land in a very dramatic fashion, it'll look great. Everything's going to look natural, and I think that's something that you can, you're really only going to get from something that's built in this way, that, it's not being done by hand, it's being done programmatically, but, programmatically guided with heavy curation.
Yeah, Phantom mentions size in the chat. Size doesn't matter, but in this case, maybe it does, because the scale is pretty impressive. And almost kind of mind-boggling to try and think of what exploration will be like and how much time it would take. You're
never going to see everything.
One of the things about these dynamic worlds is that you can't see everything. It's not static, so you can't see everything in this, because it's time as well as space. It's not just, right? Even if you could see all of the space, it's going to change over time, so you can't see or do everything. Yeah. But in games like EQ or WoW, I could spend hours swimming around continents just trying to uncover the fog of war. And eventually I would be able to cover the entire map. But it's kind of crazy to try and think of how far 2 hours, or how short of a distance 2 hours would take me on this map. I can't conceive of it at the moment. We'll see. That's going to be fun.
Well, and
to explore, especially in pre-Elyria, I think.
Well, and for you as an explorer, getting back to how size kind of does matter here, is just how much you will be able to explore, right? That all of these little things, that settlements that pop up, these little areas that literally no one has probably seen, or at least initially, because they weren't hand designed. So, I mean, you could be venturing into areas that I guess theoretically not even the designers themselves have actually been through.
Oh, no, there's going to be plenty of stuff that nobody's actually seen.
Yeah, I mean,
it'll be really interesting. And I hope that's where more interesting events will be populated, to force people to areas nobody's ever been before, as like a discovery mechanism.
Well, I think so. There's a couple things, because really it's going to be more about what I can't explore and what I'll never get to in some ways. And then, right, that's even in one lifetime. But I'm expecting that there should be story points somehow. Like often when I'm exploring, I not only like to see what's new in a new exotic locale, but I'm wondering what stories are taking place there. So there's a distraction factor there. In a game like EQ or WoW, again, the space is small enough that I eventually uncover the map and I have time to go through the story points in that area. But here I'm expecting story points to distract me from even attempting to go everywhere. But again, also when I think about like a game like Ashes, which should have a smaller map. I'm expecting to want to go around the map several times so I can see how new villages have turned into towns or cities or metros, and how those places change over time, how the NPCs evolve over time. But again, I don't expect I'm going to get, what might I get to? 20% of the map of Chronicles of Elyria in a lifetime, maybe. And I would have to do a loop in that 20% to see what's changing around there over time. I can't. I might be, even if I could make it. Yeah, even if I could make it around the map once, I'm not going to make it again around twice or three times. So that's going to be really interesting.
Yeah.
Could be.
I mean, you said, how far are you going to explore in 2 hours?
Not in 2 hours. I mean, in a lifetime. I mean, one of my questions is that.
But in 2 hours, I just think about, well, let's talk about things in real world terms. You're a person with good stamina. You know, I would imagine, how far do you think you could get on the 405 in 2 hours? It's nothing. You wouldn't get very far at all.
Yeah,
like,
even just
to walk across LA County, that's an adventure.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, and even when I think about that, right? Thinking about when I used to walk around LA 20 years ago. 2 hours might get me from Hollywood through Westwood. It's not going to get me from Hollywood to Santa Monica even.
Nope.
And I don't try that every day.
Yeah, that's so. I mean, it's just everybody think about, you know, if you're from a small hometown, you know, just how long it would take to walk around, like, you know, go through the neighborhoods and stuff. If you're from a big town, how long would it take for you to walk across town? If you're from a metropolitan area, you know, how long would it take? Just pick a direction and start walking. You know, how long is it going to take? Where are you actually going to get? So, right. You know, it's really a, you know, such an amazing scale, such an immense scale that for people who really, truly want to get around, it's going to be a matter of getting horses, getting boats, getting whatever you can to maximize transportation capacity. I don't know, getting carriages and having drivers ride in shifts, being able to swap horses every 8 hours or whatever. You know, it's gonna be a really interesting sort of thing, seeing what long distance travel and, you know, fast travel it's going to look like. It just doesn't seem like it's going to be very economical. It's going to be very expensive, I would imagine.
Well, and how that applies to wars, right? To sieges and combat. Imagining, you know, the kingdoms are going to be so large. How long would it take just to even gather your army, you know, at the border of your kingdom, let alone maybe pushing into another one a considerable amount? I mean, that will be super interesting. Of course, the fear there too is, like, if I have 2 hours to play, you know, right? You know, and it takes 3 to get somewhere. I don't know. That I guess we'll have to see how that feels whenever we get to it. But go ahead.
I was just going to say, it depends on what your goals are at that point, right? Your goals are going to be different in, most likely, for a play session in Chronicles of Elyria versus, you know, traditional MMORPGs. And, you know, there's certainly times when I cross an area and the plan is to get there. That's my plan for that session. And then the next session, I'm going to try and accomplish a quest or a task or something in that area. But what I was thinking about, speaking of wars and borders, is, again, how does water affect that? You get to where you're hoping to lay siege, and do you have water to tide you over? Or maybe a flash flood happens outside the gates of the city, or, you know, who knows how water could affect that. All right, and that gets me again into thinking about the preconceived plans of our kingdoms and communities and what we're going to do. And a lot of them talk about the PvP and the war. And that's a whole nother thing to put into your strategies. And that's just thinking about water, let alone what else in the environment.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's a perfect environment for raiders, right? If you have if you have 50 players that are with you, you all have horses of some sort, you can be in and out of a kind of poorly protected hamlet or village, basically ransack it, and before if you know what you're doing, before anyone can get there to help, I mean, you're gone. And I assume that's what a lot of people who will be new to the game that come in for just the PvP kind of action of it. I assume something like that will probably occur.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I would imagine it's one of those things that it'll have limited success because they'll do it a bit and then their numbers will kind of thin a little over time. And people will start to kind of get wise to it. And then, oh, well, now they're just firing, volleys of poison-tipped darts and arrows and stuff at us because they know they just need to take down the horses and then we're screwed. So, they have to find some way to refine their strategy, or they're going to have to move on, or, whatever. But I think that's going to be kind of a fun, interesting sort of thing. You're right. How the bad guys or whatever are going to leverage being mobile, not having to stay in one place, all of that sort of stuff, to be able to prey upon less defended areas, caravans, and that sort of stuff. Even, I would imagine pirating at sea is going to be a very lucrative business that a lot of people are going to want to engage in.
It's an interesting comment here, because I have a question. So, we're Immaculate Deception kind of put. I mentioned, is this marauders coming and taking all your stuff and leaving, and sort of the response, which makes sense, is, well, they'll leave tracks. Okay, that will happen, sure, but because of how large the world is and how travel will be, if you don't get a jump on them right away, is it really worth spending 10 hours, literally maybe 10 hours going to find them? And the comment was meta communication and using Discord, which is interesting, because this is really a world where you are separated great distances. I don't want to use the word cheating because you can't stop that from happening, right? It's going to happen. People talk. It's just an interesting idea of using outside technology to sort of make the inside the game easier.
But that's the way we play, and that's the way I expect to play. I was talking about this in Ashes, but it's going to be true of Chronicles of Elyria too. So in Ashes, there's been lots of questions, these dev diary or dev discussion things, and most of them so far have revolved around grouping, and people have been talking about finding groups. And I think the concept of groups in both of these games are going to be very different, because we normally think of groups as a party or a raid. And I think we also, in these games, have to think about the groups that are going to be formed by our communities. We're building these villages and communities in the game. Those are going to be our groups. We're citizens instead of just, right? But most of when we play, the few games that we've played Phantom, we usually set things up through Discord. When we were doing Landmark, we were going through Twitch, and we mostly communicated through Twitch or Skype, something like that at the time. And I very rarely pay attention to in-game chat. I'm usually communicating with people through Twitch chat or Discord. So I'm expecting that to be true here too. I expect we'll have our servers. We already have our Discord channels for the different communities. but we'll probably be on Theoryforge Chronicles Discord with people who want to hang out there, trying to figure out what we're going to do for the game session.
I'm probably, since I'm going to be just constantly traveling around, I'm going to be using local. Local is going to be super important for me. It's going to be the thing that probably gets me out of trouble. So I have to use it. The size and scope of the game is such that it's the first game I've ever thought of that, like, you know, you don't ever have to worry about stream sniping. The idea that somebody puts so much time and effort in actually getting to where you are to do something about you it's such a vast amount of time being spent, perhaps wasted, because then you kill them once. Great. Okay, now you've got corruption. Now anybody can kill you, and they're just going to respawn somewhere. Big deal.
But so in general, for you, I think you're kind of planning to solo because you're planning to explore a lot, and that's not necessarily going to be with a group.
I wouldn't say necessarily solo. I'm not going to reject working with other people, but I'm certainly not going to be like tied down by a group. You know, the wind blows east and that's how I'm feeling, then that's where I'm going. It doesn't matter if there's something that I had gotten some people started on. If I showed some people the entrance to a cave and I determine what's inside is too dangerous, I'll let them have it. I'll just move on. I might come circle by later and figure out what was in it.
I define solo as not being part of a party or a raid. And
then, yeah, I mean, to that extent, it is going to be more or less solo play. But.
Yeah. And what I mean by that is you're not, so like when I think of playing with Polaris, it feels like there's going to be a kind of caravan type thing moving from place to place. So it's going to be a group of people moving from place to place, which you may or may not stick around with. You're just going to, like you said, kind of go wherever you're planning to go. And that's kind of different. So those of us who are traveling in a caravan, I would expect we would probably be in the Discord group because we're together and we're doing stuff together. You know, that might not be what the people you happen to be traveling with at the moment. That's going to be more of a local thing. I agree with that. But the interesting thing about Twitch is depending on what you're doing, and I think this is alluding somewhat to what Immaculate Deception was saying. If somebody needed to track you, like you did something that other people don't like, somebody might actually attempt to follow you so people know where you are. And if they can keep up with you, then masses of people could be tracking you as you're trying to escape or leave or whatever, just because they're following you and they're streaming. So, you know, and I wonder what that could be like, trying to track people using multiple resources through Twitch. Like, hey, they just sacked this place. We want to get at them, everybody. Let's see if we can stream where they're going.
I don't know why. It's just this weird thought in my head, and it's probably completely irrational. But that somehow it feels different for this game. The idea of using Discord and Twitch, and I don't know why that is. Maybe it's the idea of a meow. I don't know. I'm not saying it's like cheating, but it just feels dirty.
It's the scale and the uniqueness of the game that you're not playing through experiences that everybody else is seeing in the same areas that everybody else is playing. And you're seeing your own unique experiences. But that's exactly why I think streaming it is so great. The idea that these things are only ever going to happen once. So the only way other people will be able to see them in full is if it's actually been streamed or committed to video and, you know, put up in some form or another. So to me, the idea of streaming the game is, you know, part trying to, you know, build channel and part trying to build hype about the game, and part also building kind of a library and backlog of history of the game.
Mm-hmm.
It's an interesting question. Assume the game won't be like other games where you can do a load command or see XY coordinates.
No.
Well, but so my question there though is, if you're planning infrastructure, like how are you supposed to accurately know how many resources you need for, say, a road of a certain distance?
I'm sure they're going to have world builder tools for people of.
But even then, you have to have some idea
levels.
of distance.
Yeah, no, I believe if I'm not mistaken, they're going to give Sir might be able to chime in if he's still in chat there. I believe it's going to be more of like a Warcraft general style view where you're actually seeing things from kind of like a top-down building view. I don't think you're actually like surveying things and walking up on a little platform to get a better view in game. I'm pretty sure they're giving you tools to make that as precise as possible.
No, there
Could be wrong.
There are ways to figure that out otherwise. But anyways,
yeah.
Well,
God damn it! Silence phone.
I expect that there will be not necessarily mods, but some kind of tools that players make. There'll be maps that help us figure out coordinates. I expect that to happen fairly quickly.
You'll be able to get a rough idea, but it's going to be decimal, like very, very small decimals to actually get somebody's pinpoint location.
Yeah, I think it's Compass, as Streaminator was saying. I'm expecting Compass to come with tools for that.
Yeah.
And, explorers, builders might have other tools that they're able to use for that. Yeah. As Immaculate Deception is saying, skills that allow you to do something like that.
Because otherwise you wouldn't be able to go out more than like a little ways past the coast. Otherwise you just get lost.
Yeah, but it will be interesting to see how well we're able to use landmarks. Scale too. I wonder how, trees and buildings. I wonder just, skyscape and all that. How well we will actually be able to navigate. But who knows?
Well, we saw that video of the desert. It looks.
I don't expect deserts to have lots of landmarks, but I was thinking more cities and villages, or wilderness, where you have, again, trees and stuff getting in the way of what you're looking at.
So I hope there's another video. And it's more of just I was curious, sort of the after. So we see the world building video, and how all that comes to be is sort of what do they use algorithm wise, or how do they start to factor in destruction? So as players take things away from the world, how does that in turn change what they have put in place from the start? Or say weather, climate. They obviously will have active weather patterns and climate. So how does that then also change? I'm just curious how they will do that, because streams change paths over time, rivers change paths over time. If that's something that can be expected as well. They mentioned the progression from here's your biome, and as it starts to generate resources and soil, and NPCs start to develop based off resources and how much so over time, as they deplete things, how does that, just how does it change over time? I guess first we have to get the initial maps all created, probably, but
yeah, that's one of the things. Maybe it's tangential, but one of the things that Snipe Hunter was saying, I think earlier today, maybe he was talking about how the sim wasn't really so much about active weather, but it helps them determine how the populace of each settlement will deal with what's going on. That's for the water sim, but I'm imagining it's going to be for everything else. So how will that affect the available food and resources in that area, which is kind of amazing to think about. So especially, again, even like you're saying, Phantom, how will that change over time? If a river or stream gets diverted and resources change, how the NPCs will react to that, and then the players as well.
Yeah, or I think we saw, they've been through a lot of maps, but wasn't there one with settlements, and there were just hundreds and hundreds of tiny dots of settlements. So I imagine there will be settlements that do not have players in them. So how does that change over time? Obviously, if a player account comes in or a mayor, they can direct change, but sort of how the game does it on its own, it's just, I'm curious to see where that comes next. You mentioned the water sim. That was the other recent shiny post yesterday. Any thoughts on either of you from that?
Yeah, as I was saying at the beginning of the show, that's a level of minutia that's just really amazing to be getting into. I want to say it was Asheron's Call 2 maybe, that had the kind of the water levels that would rise and lower based on the weather. And I thought that was great. I didn't really see a lot of games that did it since then. I don't really think a lot of voxel-based games really ever did that much with water, because nobody ever really got voxel water right. I don't know if that's still a problem, or if we're just waiting for a GPU shader to come out from one of the big giants or whatever that just makes it possible. But yeah, it's really nice to see that they're anticipating for so much. And again, it's one of those things. It's going to be a weather system. It's not just generic. There's weather on, off, and that's it. A phrase that I often say in the real world is, when it's raining, it isn't raining everywhere in the world. It's just raining on you and everyone around you. So, when it's raining here, that doesn't mean it's raining over here. There's going to be various different patterns of stuff. And so to that extent, it might actually be some amount of people moving back and forth between the areas where the water is going to be in different seasons under different conditions, and might have like a widespread settlement where they, use different parts of it in different times of the IRL year.
It is fun when you move from, you can actually cross the rain line. Oh, it's raining here. It's not raining there.
Yeah.
The rare times that happens, it's pretty amazing to experience. Yeah, that again, we've got those kind of patterns affecting one area and not another. I'm also, again, I keep thinking about these areas that could be heavy with plague or disease, and how those end up interacting with the flora and fauna and NPCs. I would love to see a map of diseased areas, or how that affects swamps and things like that. One of the things that I did like about Revival, we had maps that were not as detailed as these rain simulation or water simulation ones were, but we did have several different types of heat maps that would show us political distribution or wealth distribution, which I'm sure the COE team is using as well. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see in the future, possibly, what other influences on the map perhaps going on, what the devs are using to help design the game. NPC governments and all that stuff, yeah.
With the water, and just how persistent things are. You mentioned diseased areas. Is it possible to... So if you have a river that starts way up in the Northern Kingdom, it happens to go all the way down somewhere middle middle of the continent, or maybe even complete southern coast. Like, are you able to actually put something in the water that then persistently goes down that river a long ways? So could you poison someone downstream from you?
Good question.
Greybeard is asking about airborne viruses, and I'm wondering what.
I can't remember how the Syrian plague was transmitted, but if I remember correctly, vinegar worked as a disinfectant. So if you're worried about that, just spray a little vinegar on a rag and wrap it around your face, and good to go.
I mean, they were using plague masks, so probably they at least felt that some of it was airborne.
Or they just go to those because they don't know any better.
Right, that's what I was saying. Right, they at least thought it was airborne. Yeah.
Either that, or it's like, well, we can't take any risk. We had to wear the cool bird masks.
I wonder how hard it would be to create an incurable disease and spread it throughout the entire continent, the entire landmass. I wonder how
In
long that would take.
Elyria?
Yeah. I don't know. That sounds very devious, but
Incurable. I don't think they're going to allow that because it's a world where magic does exist. So there will always be some divine, supernatural, otherworldly, etc.
So they'll be able to just say, "We're done with this."
Yeah, or it's like, "Egad, you prayed to your god, and your god spoke back and said." Oh, you just put like a little talcum powder under your fingernails, and that totally cures it.
Why can't we poison the gods?
You can try, dude. Good luck. I think the twofold queen might both appreciate and punish you for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what alchemy is for. I'm assuming we'd be able to do some research and find a cure, but it might take a while. It might be something that we have to actually discover.
Might also be that, yeah, it's incurable, but it only affects a very slight population. So, like, 1 in 50 people actually gets affected. And while that's epic proportions, if 49 out of 50 people are naturally resistant, it'll pass like diarrhea.
Why?
Quickly.
There's a comment from Immaculate Deception. Sounds like a great thing for SBS to create that allows us to destroy their player base. The pessimist in me says anything that contributes to player death is actually financially going to end up being a positive for Sparks.
No, negative. No. You want to do as little to kill people off as possible because all of the people that are, in between being able to play and they're just in offline mode, the more of them you kill off, the more people resent it when they come back and their character is dead.
But you're going to have to balance that with somehow, right? You're going to have to somehow make a balance to where Sparks actually give you some sort of revenue. So I'm not saying how to do that. I'm
sure they'll get plenty of people, alcoholics and people that just want to do bad and be bad, and it's like, yeah, I don't care, Corruption City, bring it on. I'll grind a character into the ground in like a month apiece, and that's just gonna be my stream. It's just being the jerk that everyone wants to kill. They'll sell units. I'm not worried about they'll make it happen.
I mean, I would argue that if you did it on the average of a monthly subscription cost, that's fair.
Yeah.
Although we are moving more and more into free-to-play models. So.
Well,
Destiny 2.
It's just such an interesting model.
Yeah, and I was thinking, though, I it seems like there's all kinds of other stuff that they'll entice us to buy besides just Sparks. I don't think.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's balanced by that, too. They'll have a store to do that, too. But
yeah.
I'm just saying that there obviously must be an expectation of some sort of revenue, otherwise it wouldn't exist. So.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
I'm glad you brought that up, though, because I forgot about even, previously when I've been thinking about alts in terms of the 25 plus alts that I was planning for
And each
revival.
generation thereafter.
I was wondering if Chronicles of Elyria could entice me at some point to the same degree, but there's sparks involved with that. So no, I don't think it'll be possible for them to entice me to do that many.
We'll see.
Alts.
We'll see.
Because I have to pay for it. When they're free, then that's easy. When they're not free,
If it's built well, you will probably have quite a bit.
not if I die every 2 months. That's what Greybeard's saying. So
yeah, I don't think it's a die every 2 months. I think it's die every 2 months if you're reckless and you get into bad stuff, or if you only ever have high influence characters that again are reckless and keep on dying. Otherwise, yeah.
If everybody is saying fuck digs, then just
no, they just do that on YouTube.
Yeah, but the thing is, if everybody says fuck digs in the game and everybody's killing you and there's just this like horde of people with corruption surrounding you at all times, like that's an amazing phenomenon. That's truly a spectacle.
Yeah.
I think if they did that, the studio might just give you like super boss mode, and it's like, all right, we're putting a blessing on Diggs that for every person with corruption that's in his proximity, his attributes are just all doubled. 50, you want to attack him? Raid boss.
Yeah. Yep.
That would actually, I'd love to see that. The boss's health meter says, "Fuck Diggs."
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so far, that's just so far on YouTube. We'll see if that actually kind of follows you in game or not. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah. So what else happened over?
They allowed people to choose servers again. So they realized, hey, we don't know how long it's going to be for us to actually select these things. Y'all don't have to actually pick your primary server, or if you didn't pick your primary servers, we're opening it back up. You get to do that again. So I think that is going to change things. I think it opens up the opportunity for more people to get in on the action, but there's nothing wrong with that, especially if people who were on the fringe didn't realize how much they actually wanted it until like the doors closed and FOMO just started hitting them like a bus. It's like, okay, no, I want it. And then, bought in. I have no idea. Hopefully they've gotten some extra sales since then.
So let's recap a little bit. So we've only had, for domain selection, we've only had kingdom selection. Is that right?
Oh, Immaculate's actually correcting that it is just for people that own titles but didn't select a server. That's right. Okay. You're correct. I don't mean to misrepresent that.
Yeah.
So what was your question, Diggs?
Recapping, it's just been kingdom selection so far?
Yeah, so far
it's just been... What, 6 weeks ago?
Yeah, it was a little while ago. Mm-hmm. And since then, it's been in the works. They realized how much more they actually needed to do than they realized, and realized that they don't want to move forward with it until they're ready to be at a point where it doesn't feel like they're wasting their or our time. Because if they're going to do the time slots thing again, then they're definitely going to need to let people schedule things off so they can get in on their time slot.
And do we have an idea of what they hope to accomplish, what they hope to have accomplished before they open it up to what's next? Is it Duke selection? What's the next selection?
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yep. Yeah.
And then then counts and then mayors.
Yeah. So do we know what have they been saying? So what was the thing that they thought was going to hold them up for Duke selection? Was it?
I
Is there another level of map generation that?
I think it was they realized, holy crap, we can't actually go forward with the minutiae and details beyond this because people want to actually know what's going to be in their area and be able to work around it. So that basically required them to build the rest of it in.
Yeah, water flow is one, but they're going to want to know what type of resources are available and things like that, right?
Yeah, I think they've done a lot of the resource stuff. I think water was one of the last ones.
Okay. Mm-hmm. All right.
Yeah, because imagine if you spent whatever money you spent to be a duke, and from a scaled back perspective, this land looks really good, and then you pick you pick your spot, and then you actually get into where they finally finish the detail, and there's no water that runs through here, or very little, or something you didn't expect. Mm-hmm. That would suck. So, I think that's probably a great idea to pause and say, okay.
Yeah, it's a great idea to pause.
Kingdoms,
I just didn't know what's stopping them. You know what they hope to have.
That's it.
It shows.
And it's been. And one thing I've noticed too, really since then, and we kind of talked that this would happen, that people got all upset, and then sort of slowly it's been a little bit calmer. And I think a big part of that is them just sharing the why, that video, the water stuff. I mean, it puts it into perspective, or at least I hope it does, as to why it's taking the time it's taking. So, just being transparent and showing people where you're at is really all it takes to stop the masses from revolting. It's certainly a whole lot better than, nope, we're going to wait another week. Sorry. And then that's sort of it.
Well, not even another week. We're going to wait until we're ready and have what we need when we feel like we have what we need in order to help you guys select where you're going to live, where you're going to want to settle. This scale thing, I was just thinking of Polite's zoo, and like how small that zoo might end up being. Like, how much of an area can he actually control in terms of that? That's fascinating to think about.
So we are getting towards the end of our time here. I'm just actually reading chat to see if there's anything talking about. There's a question. Go ahead.
Yeah, it was the question about what was going to be sold after Expo, and it is just basically Souls and Sparks. All of the other stuff basically gets expended going into Kingdoms and pre-Kingdom stuff. So all of the stuff that is required for where the titles for where you're going to settle and all of that stuff, they needed that to be done now, not after map selection, because it was part of the map selection process. Once everybody's been placed everywhere, then they can actually start running the remaining simulations and figuring out where the rest of the places are going to be. I think they said there was actually going to be fire sale prices on titles to fill in the slots before Kingdoms, but I think that was maybe going to be the only other major sale. And then after Kingdoms, it's done. Once the game's actually starting, it's good.
Again, the pessimist in me, I mean, at that point, your money model is going to be on really wanting people to die. So, it'll be interesting to see how that plays into everything. I don't know. Then you start talking about, inevitably there will be complaints about ganking and groups of people, ganging up, and what stance will Soulbound take on that? I don't know, because your business model is dependent on people dying. And the tricky part, like you mentioned, you don't want to kill people too quickly, because then they will get frustrated and quit playing. But at the same time, you can't. I guess my question is, I don't know the answer to this, and I don't know why. Maybe Serpentius can answer. So what a lifetime, a character lifetime is in actual real time for us? Like I guess that's the other thing I'm not really aware of. The reason I ask is because we've talked about how seasons are so quick for farming. So if seasons are somehow within a matter of weeks, like what is an actual player life?
I want to say if you're a low influence sort of character, you're just gonna keep your head down, stay healthy, stay well fed, don't get in trouble. You're probably expected to live about a year, but as you do more interesting things, the life expectancy starts to diminish.
Yeah, which I'm seeing that in chat, which gives me all kinds of crazy thoughts about seasons. But anyways, I don't
8 to 12 months is what we're seeing, or average.
Serp said 6 to 12 is what he's looking at, but again, that's keeping the mechanic of how you respawn in mind. That
which
it's not like you're up to a certain age and then you die, and it's like RNG determines whether or not like you get to come back to life or not. It's a little bit more complex.
Which, is interesting. I guess we're kind of out of time, so this is probably going to be, this actually might be not a bad topic for a later show. So I mean, if you have, say, 8 months, I can't do the math in my head, 8 months, $25 a spark, what is that per month? Somebody thought, what, $3 a month, basically?
Yeah, thereabouts.
$3 a month. All free-to-play games nowadays, their business model, there's some sort of cash shop, right? That's how they make their money. They don't have a sub. The ones that are subscription, those cost generally $15. So where does this end up with $3 a month or so? It's an interesting topic maybe to have at a later time.
Well, the biggest thing I'll say is there's always value. There's always something to be said about the money that you've got in your pocket, because the money you got in your pocket is always worth more than the money that an assumed subscription is going to pay, and then it doesn't. At the same time, there's also the sneaky, dirty side of things where people may forget to cancel their subscription, and then they see they've been paying for a game that they haven't been playing for the past year.
Well, and there's another great comment from Asparagus Annie is that most of these folks, like I think I have like 5 or 6 sparks. So, I mean, it's just an interesting model that I guess I hadn't really thought of before. How you survive on that.
I think they're expecting alcoholism, that it's rare that people play a free-to-play with just one character, is what I'm guessing. And so people are going to want to have multiple characters, especially the idea that, like, oh man, I can have my crafter dude just crafting for me, and I can have my harvester dude just harvesting for me, and I can, have this character doing this for me. So I have one character I'm actually playing, and the rest are doing things automatically. That's sweet. I could see people throwing down on that, and then when those characters die, just keep cycling them along.
Which Immaculate Deception kind of just mentioned is what we talked about earlier. The engine itself. Do you license it out later? I mean, if they can get these world generation tools down and working, I mean that would be an amazing thing to license out to other people, I would think. But because what does every game need? It needs a world. So. All right. Well, with that, we are at the end of our time here. So, thank you everyone for watching. We hopefully we will be back in 2 weeks. Obviously, a week. If for some reason we start DSS before our 2 week mark, hopefully that happens. But if not, we will be back with this show in 2 weeks. Otherwise, next week we'll have our Ashes show. So, thank you all for watching and joining us, and have a good weekend.
Going to E3.